Today I want to dig into the four rivers that are in the Bible in Genesis 2 about the Garden of Eden, the four rivers that are mentioned there. And they are given names, and of course, the names change. We'll start here with the Fertile Crescent, or Mesopotamia as it's called, or Iraq, that area. And you can see the Persian Gulf there. And there you see the two rivers that are named the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And for this video, I'm quickly going to go into some other maps, but for this video, names don't mean a lot, okay? They're important in a sense that they can give us a hint. But remember, we're talking about 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. Names do change. So just because someone puts the name Euphrates or Tigris to a river, that doesn't automatically mean that that river is the one that's mentioned in the Bible. Just saying, right? Same as the Nile River. It wasn't the original name of the Nile River, or pretty much any river or any place in the world. We can go anywhere. Just look at almost any city in the US or Canada, they're all named after somewhere else. Or if you go to South America, if you go to even in Africa, it's got names have come from Rome, they've come from Greece, names have come from all over the place. As people conquer and reconquer, names are placed according to what people want the name for whatever reason to be there. So we'll get into that. I want to look at this other map. It's a Munster map. One of my commenters on the last video I did on Babel, or Babylon being in Cushite land, mentioned this map, and it happens, I had just looked at it myself, but I want to thank that viewer for that. But this map is excellent. For one thing, it's an old map. It's about 400, 500 years old. But this map is how Africa was envisioned in the Middle Ages, you know? And so it gives us an idea. Again, names don't mean a lot. These names with the Roman letters, or they don't mean a lot. But the names give us a few hints, and I want to look at a couple of things here. Just quickly, I'm going to zoom in. Over here on the right, you see the island of Meroe, and that's the Nile River going up there. Down at the very bottom, you see this mountains. It looks like a brown piece of bread. And those are the mountains of the moon, and the supposed start of the Nile River system. And in our last video we did, Meroe featured in there because Meroe is an ancient Cushite land kingdom. There's lots of ruins there, as great as there are in Egypt. They just haven't been excavated. Nothing has been excavated in Africa except really the Egypt when it really comes down to it. But be that as it may. So we placed on our last video Babylon being possibly in the Cushite land near Meroe, that island. But you can see right below the Red Sea, this river coming off, and this area, it's a mountainous area. Again, another loaf of bread there. But this is another mountainous river region, and it's the area which today would be Somalia, Ethiopia, and Eastern Sudan, that area. And Ethiopia, by the way, hundreds of years ago included almost all of a huge chunk of Africa. But anyway, that name's changed, like I said. But this set those brown mountains, if you want to call it that, uplift, goes all the way. Actually, it's all the way from Egypt, the southern part of Egypt, all the way down to South Africa. There is a ridge and a system of ridges that run all the way down with the fault line, all the way down Africa. And so this area here, they've named Havilah, okay? Now, just because they name it Havilah, and we're going to see in the scripture right now, I'm going to go into that scripture, but don't remember that that's where they placed it 500 years ago. That doesn't mean that it was the place Havilah, which had lots of gold. So let's get into the scripture now. Okay, so here we are in Genesis 2, and just Bible Gateway, and this is the King James Version. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. Other translations are four rivers, but let's say heads or headwaters or basins, whatever you'd like to call that. The name of the first is Pishon, and that it is which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good, and there is bdellium and the onyx stone. Bdellium, we're going to get into, is like myrrh. It's this from the sap of a tree in the arid desert regions, semi-arid desert regions of Arabia down through North Africa. And the onyx stone is a precious stones, right, which come from volcanic areas. So we're going to be looking at hints today, not proof, right? Don't get upset about the video, I hope. It's not going to be about proof. I'm not going to prove one place or another. We're just looking at ideas. There's things to think about. And it says the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. In other translations, the whole land of Cush, which is the same land. And the name of the third was Hiddekel, which some people call the Tigris River. And that is which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. So we don't have a lot of hints about the last two, but we do about the first two. But before I get into that, I want to have some fun with you if you want to enjoy this. I'm going to show you actually 5 or 6 different places that people believe. Different people have different opinions about where the rivers for the Garden of Eden is. So I don't want to just say it's just not Mesopotamia or this part of North Africa below Egypt. So let's look at a few of those. Let's get in with the most extravagant, most interesting one, and very, very interesting. This is a rabbit hole if you want to go look at other people put videos out about this. It's fascinating. So this is a picture of the world from long ago, a map of the world. And in it, there's lots of maps of the world from 500, 400, 500, 600 years ago, those older maps that place where we call the North Pole, they place 4 lands with rivers going out of those lands. And in the center, you'll see in the very center a rock. And that rock is called Piedra Negra, or black rock, like the company. And so it's supposed to be sitting right below the North Star, and that is supposed to be possibly the place of the Garden of Eden. Now we call it the North Pole because there's a lot of ice there, that's what we say, and all that kind of thing. But be that as it may, it's a really good rabbit hole to go down if you're interested in that kind of thing. But again, they have 4 rivers coming out to the ocean from this place, and that is what's on old maps. The next one I want to look at, that is that Adam and Eve were before the flood in what is North America. So they have the Mississippi as being the river that comes out of the headland, or the waters the land. And so that's a different viewpoint. Then there's this one. It's interesting. I can't remember where I got it from. I just grabbed the image off the internet. But it's this person believes, and it could be possible too, that there's a lot more you don't know about the southern part of Africa. I'll grant you that. And it's not something I've looked into. So if anybody is from that area, and people do watch the videos from there, I'd love to hear some information, more information about this area. I know that there's people that believe that Namibia holds Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, and there are names, a lot of names in that area of biblical names, and who knows, right? And they believe that Cape Town is Capernaum and that kind of thing. I have looked into that a little bit. But here they have listed 4 rivers coming out and going into one, and that is their interpretation. Then there's others that have looked at this area, which we are going to focus in a bit on, which of course is North Africa, the land of Cush. And there's a reason that I'm looking at the land of Cush. So if you see Ethiopia there, Somalia down, and then there's Kenya down below, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Uganda and all that, and Sudan you can see there right in the center. You see the White Nile and the Blue Nile, and you see the mountain ranges sort of show up a little bit on this map. But the Nile River, of course, is one of the longest rivers there is, and it forms the belief is that it forms in what is called the Mountains of the Moon, which is down near Mount Kenya. So Africa, it's one thing you might want to look into too, is that Africa is way, way larger than what we see on maps that we are shown when we're growing up. It's much, much larger, way larger than North America. You could fit what I'm seeing here, or what you're seeing in the map, you could fit all of North America pretty much in there. US would fit in there easily. Okay, we're talking large expanses of land. There's things you can go look up on the internet, quite fascinating, where they place US, China, all of Europe, a whole bunch of other nations on the land, the continent of Africa, and there's still tons of more other parts of the world that be put on there. It's a huge, huge. I remember talking to one fellow, and I said, Africa's quite large. And no, it's not. And I said, no, it's larger than North. No, you're wrong. I said, well, why don't you go look it up on your? Just look. You got your phone. Just look it up. He was like, oh. So, yeah, the maps make Greenland look humongous when it's really not, and it makes Africa look small when it's not. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, so the Blue Nile and the White Nile, we're going to look at that area right now. And remember from the video we did previously, the land of Cush, Mizraim being possibly in Egypt, put possibly in what we call North Africa, Libya, through that. The Sahara was not dirt and sand like it is now. It was lush. There were lakes and 3,000 and 4,000, 5,000 years ago. But anyway, Cush, we see the land of Cush, which most people accept to be the land of Cush. And remember that Moses married a Cushite woman, so that makes sense. Since he escaped Egypt, he probably went down into what would be Cushite land. And so we see this is the river system of the Nile. It doesn't show well on this map, but I wanted you to see where we're talking about the Cushite land along the eastern side of Africa in the north. You know, where on the other, Yemen is on the other side of the Red Sea. So again, we come back to this old Munster map, and I'll zoom in one more time. So we see this Havilah, and that's important. Before we speak to Havilah, because I really want to get into that, I think we have to anchor our discussion as much as we can, because remember, this is all conjecture, right? There's no proof from 4,000, 5,000 years ago as to what these four rivers were. But there are hints, right? At least the people that wrote the Bible, you know, at that time when they wrote it, they gave us hints. And the strongest hints are about the river that goes into the land of Havilah, and the second one, the Gihon, which I believe is the Nile River, because it is the one that flows through the land of Cush. And we were just looking at the land of Cush. So there's probably, you can't say anything for certain, but I would probably stake quite a bit on the fact that the Nile River is the river that goes through the land of Cush. The Blue Nile, which is splits off, is another one we're going to discuss now. I just want to refresh ourselves on the scripture one more time. Remember, it's a river went out of Eden to water the garden. From thence it was parted and became four heads. Now, of course, what we see as rivers in our day, any river that I can think of, doesn't divide up into four heads or headwaters. It's more the other way around, that there's four headwaters go and rivers run down into one river. But be that as it may, that's why we're talking about speculation here, not fact. But the fact that this is a fact, most scholars, most people, most Bible believers do believe that the Fertile Crescent, or as I said, the Mesopotamia, that is the area where these rivers were. But there is a huge problem, and scholars say this as well, right? Because they already have this anchor of one of the rivers encompassing the land of Cush. Well, they know that is down, or they believe that is down in, below Egypt, right? And so then they go, well, there's the Euphrates and Tigris way up there, starting up in Turkey and coming down into Iraq. Okay, so there's two rivers there, and that's where they believe Babylon is. And in our last video, and I'll leave a link to it at the end, but our last video I just did was on the possibility that Babylon, being Babel, coming from Babel, that area, at least Babel, where the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is in Cushite land, way down in Africa. And so that's what we went over that premise, because none of this stuff is really probably provable with what we have today. But the Fertile Crescent only has two real rivers, right? The Tigris and the Euphrates. And it certainly doesn't have the four. And we're going to see in a minute that it doesn't have the gold. There's no river that has the gold and the myrrh, or the sap that comes from that plant, nor does it have the gemstones. So those rivers, if you asked anybody where would the Euphrates River is, not anybody, but most people would go, yeah, that I know where that is. But that's because we call it the Euphrates River. That's what we're used to. That's what we're used for the Tigris River. But when we say, tell me, you went to ask somebody, where's the Gihon River? Or they'd be like, or the Gihon River, they'd be like, I'm sorry, I haven't heard of that unless they're really founded in the Bible. And so, yeah, but if you said, where's the Nile River? They go, oh, I know where the Nile River is. Yeah, I've heard of that. It's in Egypt, right? So that is something to do with names. But remember, rivers don't move very much unless there's huge, like the flood maybe or something. There's huge happenings. that have caused upheavals of the land and changed river systems. But rivers can change their names very easily. Just look at North America. I'm sure 500-600 years ago, none of those, there was no Mississippi River or all the other rivers that are named after mostly Gentile things. But be that as it may, just remember that names are, yes, slightly important, but really they're more important in terms of what people think those rivers are from 100, 500, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. That's how I see it, okay? It's like in my other videos, I've talked about when Rome became Christian, then they went, Helena, the mother of Constantine, went over to what we call Jerusalem today. And she said, this is this is that, this is the Mount Sinai, this is Jericho, this is, this is, she placed those names there. And now as they're going and doing archaeological work, take the city of Jericho, I've done a video on that, or the town of Jericho. When Moses and Joshua and Caleb and the whole million plus people came in from supposedly the Sinai, that town or city didn't have any walls standing at that time, right? It was almost deserted. It didn't have walls. So then they go, that's what the archaeologists find. So that causes a problem, right? So either you start casting out the Bible, which is what most, not all, but a lot of scholars today are just calling the Bible myth, because as they dig, the more they dig, the more it doesn't match up. I've done a video as well on the fact that there are only 700 to 1,000. That's what they find is a town of 700 to 1,000 people at the time of King David and King Solomon, where Jerusalem is today. At 700 to 1,000, well, Solomon was supposed to have 1,000 wives and concubines, which means the city, just to support that, and his armies and palaces, it'd have to be 50,000, 100,000. It would have to be a big place, right? Yet they don't find palaces, they don't find grandeur, they don't find anything. They just find a small little village. So that a lot of the scholars, or many scholars, are saying that David and Solomon may have existed, but they were just little chieftains. Well, that's because we have placed through Rome that land, the Levant or Palestine. We have felt that that is where Jesus was and all that thing, David. And is it or not? My opinion, no, but others will disagree and they think it is, and that's fine. But if it was actually in Africa, which is what I believe, then that opens up the Bible to be completely different. And that's one of the things in my channel, Fleeing Babylon. It's not about saying I'm right, you're wrong, or there's so many different channels that are wonderful channels bringing up all kinds of things. It's like these maps that I showed you. Some people truly believe that the Garden of Eden is where the North Pole is today. Some believe it's America. Some believe it's South Africa. Some believe it's here. Some believe it's Mesopotamia. And I'm sure we'd find others that would believe that it's in the Indus Valley of India or who knows where. And if you have other places, I'd love you to comment and put what you think. But realize that all these things that happened 4,000 and 5,000, 6,000 years ago, it's very hard for us to say with any way of saying, I've got proof. That's very, very difficult. I know people will say, well, they've dug up tablets in the Babylon area, what they call the Babylon area of Turkey or from Iraq. I've dug up things. Well, that proves it. Well, no, it just says that there's some tablets. How did those tablets get there? Were they made there, or were they brought there, or did someone play around, mess with our heads? Who knows? But proof is hard to get, but we do get hints. And I think if you're looking at the Watson and Holmes scenario, that's about all we can do when we're trying to deal with the past, is hints. So let's get into that. So I talked to Chad about this. It's like it's a person. I talked to Chad and I said, okay, so this river that goes through Havilah has certain systems, right? It has a river, of course, river flowing through it must be a substantial river, at least a decent sized river. It has to be fairly dry in order to have the type of trees that give the sap for the bdellium, or we could call it myrrh or camphora. But anyway, where this sap comes from, those trees go from West Africa all the way through to Arabia. That's their habitat. So it has to be that kind of semi-arid landscape. That's where those trees live. So we know that because we have that type of sap. And then we also know there was gold, and it has to be 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, because when the Bible, some people actually believe the Bible's only came from about 200 years before Christ, and others believe it was much earlier. I tend to believe it was earlier, but it doesn't really matter. But let's say at least 2,500 years ago, or up to 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, there have to be gold mines or humans extracting gold, because the scripture says there's good gold there. It's well known for its gold and for its gems. So we have to have gemstones. We have to have this sap, this tree that gives sap, and we have to have gold. And so I asked Chat to come up with some areas, and it came up with four. One being Mesopotamia, okay, one being in Arabia, one being West Africa, and one being here in North Africa, just below Egypt and Cushite lands. I asked which is the best, and it definitely said the one that is from the Munster map is the best, just south of Egypt. It has the gemstones, the onyx and gemstones. It has gold mines that are 4,000 years old. We're talking not just alluvial gold like gold panning, but gold mines from ancient gold mines. And it has this sap, the myrrh or frankincense. It has those trees there, as it does on the other side of Arabia, have that. And that's one of the features for Arabia that makes it a positive too. But let's look at first the one that's the top one, which is what we're looking at today, which is where the Blue and the White Nile split and into those mountain ranges over the Great Rift Valley and up into the Rift Mountains that are along the east side of Africa. So it says for gold, very strong, ancient and continuous in the Arab-Nubian Shield. Ecology, it's savanna with desert transition, fits well into where these trees live. The resin flora, the Commiphora africana, it's present. Then you have rivers. And of course, there's a river, the Nile River, the Blue Nile goes through there. And of course, there's seasonal water as well. Ancient mining, as I said, that's one of the key things. There had to have been, it was known for its gold and gems. So we have ancient mining, Egyptian and Nubian systems. And its cultural anchor, this is very important too. As I said, the anchor is the Cush, the first river, the Gihon River going through the lands of Cush. That is an anchor. But then we look at this second river that goes into this land, and it's a perfect match. It's not perfect in the sense that it's for sure true or factual, but it certainly fits very well, and that's what Chat agreed with. It is the closest match. As I said, it looked at West Africa, which has tons of gold and has ancient gold mines, but it doesn't have the rest, the ecology, the resin, and the river structure that it's needed, especially the four rivers and that type of thing. Arabia, so we're talking the Yemen highlands. It has the gold, it has the resin and flora, and it has the ecology, but it doesn't have large-scale ancient gold mining or gemstones, and it doesn't have the river systems because it is one of the driest places in the world. But it does have geographic proximity to what we consider early biblical traditions. So it's good. Now onto the Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates river systems. The rivers, now this is Chat saying this is a strong structural system, Tigris and Euphrates. But if you go and ask Chat, and I have, I'm not going to go through that, but if you ask Chat, well, 3,000 years ago were those rivers named the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, it'll go, no, there's no proof of that, right? So that's it. We feel comfortable, Chat feels comfortable, because that's where everybody feels that these two rivers really are. But that's only because we have made assumptions, just like when Helena named the Holy Land, then we make assumptions based on that. But it doesn't have the gold. As it said, it's not a defining feature. It's not known for gold, ancient or now. It's not known for having any of this resin, okay? The resin that comes from this type of tree. I think it's Commiphora africanus or whatever it's called. And it doesn't have the gold-rich land, and it doesn't have the gemstones. But it does tie to what our world considers the biblical area. That's really its main tie, other than the name of the rivers. That's it. But you can see why it is not a good fit for this Havilah area. Okay? So if we go back to this map, it's funny because you see up on the right there, it says Sennar Dam, Sennar or Shinar. That's, and then, that was close to Babylon, right? So that, again, the names don't prove anything. It's just another little interesting thing. And I'm not going to do a video right now on it, but I found at least 10 maps, and even today, there is Sennar or Shinar is still there on the maps, pretty much all the maps. It's there in that same area, right where the Blue and the White Nile split in that vast area there. Okay, so the Blue Nile goes up to Lake Tana, and it's again through in the Ethiopia in the mountains there, and that is what I'm going to and that's what I'm going to put down as the Pishon River, which goes through the land of Havilah. The White Nile being possibly the Gihon, and then we have to come up with two other rivers. And this is interesting, and this is where it gets, of course, into much conjecture again, too, right? But if I take, and I asked Chat this, if I take the system of these this whole mountain system that runs from north to south along the east coast of Africa, that's a fault line, and it goes up and down, so it's not like there's just one headwaters. There are various. But there are rivers, and the next one I'm going to mention is the Congo, the River Congo, the Congo River. And it goes through where you can, of course, see the Democratic Republic of Congo and Central African Republic through that area. But the Congo River empties into the Atlantic, and it is a huge river as well. But its headwaters are again here just by Lake Victoria down that way. But again, it's in the mountain area of this fault line. The fourth river I want to mention is the Zambezi. It's not on this map. It's further south a little bit, and it goes down into South Africa area. Again, another huge river. But all four of these rivers have their headwaters within this same system of uplift or mountains, if you want to call it. I know that it's not one continuous system, it's up and down because it's broken. It is the same system because of the uplift. Now there's some really good knowledgeable people that placed comments on the last video, which are wonderful. And I really did appreciate all the wonderful comments incredible comments that I had on my last video. But they mentioned the Niger River, which of course is over where Niger is there. It's a huge river as well. The only issue, and they thought that was one of those four rivers. I'm not saying it is or isn't, of course, because I have no more proof than you do. But it was interesting. But the only thing with that is it does not have a headwater within the Ethiopian uplands that go all the way down to South Africa. It's mountains. It's up the Atlas Mountains and up in that way. So the Niger River is another river. But there's the Orange River. There's lots of great rivers in Africa. We just don't realize how great they are. Like Lake Victoria. I am going to do a video on Lake Victoria because, of course, that's a British name that was given to it. But that possibly could be the Sea of Galilee. Or there's lots of other great lakes in Africa that are huge. Lake Victoria is larger than what we call the land of Israel today. It's huge, whereas the Sea of Galilee is a teeny little lake, very, very small. Anyway, just remember, names change, places change. All these countries weren't here 2,000 years ago as they are, except maybe Egypt, maybe Ethiopia. But, Chad, Niger, those places, they didn't have those borders. Those are all more recent. I'm going to leave a link to a great video that I saw yesterday by TrillBlack, I think his name is. Fantastic video, where they've got cave paintings up in the Sahara area, with giraffes and lots of the regular animals that we associate with Africa way up there in cave paintings, and where there's no water there anymore. And there's old maps that show there used to be, but just saying that when Moses came across, he came down through that way, in my opinion. And so I'm going to do a video. I've got a video here about Moses crossing the Yam Suf, going into that area for 40 years, wandering in the grasslands where the Sahara is now. And then on this video here is the one I just did on Babylon and the potential that Babylon was in Cush's land. And Cush, of course, was the father of Nimrod, and Nimrod founded the Tower of Babel. So was Babylon or Babel rather down where we see Ethiopia, that area now, all the way up towards Meroe? Or was it what most people believe up in Mesopotamia? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.